In today's video, we have yet another very exciting video for you guys. We are seeing the models and the Prediction Center becoming much more confident in the colder air, even versus yesterday's video. And not only are they more confident, we're seeing them become a lot more aggressive, showing borderline historically cold air here in the eastern portion of the nation, especially the mid-Atlantic, northeast, and southeast. It's going to be that kind of corridor, a little bit of the Ohio Valley as well. We do see multiple threats for major snowstorms on today's model run as well, even for areas in the southeast, mid-Atlantic, northeast. We're going to be discussing all of these things. Let's first off take a look at the past 30 days. I know I talk about this every day, but really all you need to know, we've seen a little warming in here as the final 3 days of December here are going to be a bit warmer for these regions. They could hold on to some of this blue, end up right around average, but the area that we're most confident in kind of seeing a cold month here overall, once we look back at it, is this eastern corridor here that I just circled in. And this is significant, and it typically wouldn't be historically, but it's significant because we haven't really had a cold winter month, full month in like, I would say 3 or 4 years. So to see this December end up moderately below average is significant. And January has a really, really good chance of being the same way, if not worse. So with that in mind, we might end up with a cold winter overall, which, we can't really say that for the past 5 or so winters. So pretty huge stuff just because of the pattern we've been stuck in. We do see warmer temperatures have really, really flourished over the west, and this has aided in bringing the cold air straight into the east. Let's take a look at the Climate Prediction Center real quickly. This is the 6 to 10 day outlook. They did just update this today. I know they updated it yesterday too, but they did back-to-back updates, I guess. So we're seeing an update here for the 28th. Warmer temperatures in the west. Really far below average temperatures here again in this corridor, Ohio, Pennsylvania, southward, New Jersey as well, southward all the way into the Carolinas. So Virginia, West Virginia also in there, Delaware, DC, Maryland, all of those areas being kind of the heart of that cold. And when we look at that's the 3rd through the 7th, by the way, but when we look at the 5th through the 11th, we see it deepens. We see that same shade of blue taking up a lot of the east here. And we actually have a deeper dark blue shade here for North Carolina, Virginia. So kind of that southern mid-Atlantic, northern southeast corridor. And these are some of the areas that, have been in a snow drought for a very long time. And I think we could get some snow in this area, especially with this very cold air. And actually we get warmer along the west coast as well for this 5th through 11th time frame. Now, that one they updated as well, but they didn't update this one. I'm still going to show it. This was updated yesterday, so this is the same as yesterday's video. This is for the 11th through the 24th. Warm persisting in the west, even through this long-range period, and cold persisting, especially in the southeast here for this period as well. Which is very, very interesting. And with this in mind, we could end up with, the 1st through the 24th being a majority cold here. And that would likely put us in that below average category for the entire month of January, as I mentioned. Let's take a look here at the European model real quickly. I'm going to move us towards this afternoon. And what we see here is really some storms picking up across the deep south, southeast, mid-Atlantic. Tornadic activity already starting up. We've already had some tornado reports in here as we have a moderate risk of severe weather, so be on the lookout for that. I think we do have what's called a PDS tornado watch, particularly dangerous situation is what that stands for, which really means that they're not only indicating that tornadoes will be possible, but really dangerous ones in particular. So you think EF 2, 3, 4, 5 being possible today. Really, really concerning there. We do see snowfall persisting for the northwest. That's been the case, obviously, for a majority of the winter. But when we look at the overall pattern, we see that it's mostly cold here in this northwest and north central corridor, and it's quite mild in the east here today. I think it was upper 60s here in Virginia. I wore shorts and a t-shirt. It's absolutely stunning outside, so enjoy it because January is going to be a huge, huge turnaround. I know a lot of you don't like the warmth in the wintertime, but when there's more cold coming and you get a, 2 or 3 day warm up, just enjoy it. It can't be that bad. It's really nice to get out there and just feel the warmth because it might be months before you feel it again. You never know. As we take a look at Sunday here on December 29th, tomorrow from the time I'm making this video, we still have storms in the northwest, snowfall for the Cascades, Sierra Nevada here really heavy, and then also the northern Rockies. We do have a significant low, which is causing a lot of this severe weather across Ohio and Indiana here. This has a dragging cold front underneath it, a warm front out ahead. In the springtime, this would likely be an even more major situation when you get this really, really strong push of warm air northward there in that warm front corridor and a pretty significant blast of cold air coming in behind. That creates a lot of instability in these areas, and not only that, a lot of shear. So we do expect more severe weather and more tornadic activity tomorrow for these mid-Atlantic and southeast areas. As we move towards Monday, on the 30th, we do see there's a low in between the Hudson Bay and the Great Lakes here. Cold front now mostly offshore unless you're in New England, so those storms will be said and done. Quite a bit colder on the 30th than it will be these next 2 days. Well, today and tomorrow, I mean. So the 28th and 29th going to be the warmest. Quite a bit cooler, closer to normal, I would say, here on Monday the 30th. We do see a 995 now starting up for the plains, bringing some snowfall to the northwest of it and also some showers a lot closer to the low. Let's take a look at what happens by the time we reach Tuesday. And what we see is that this low is actually going to be our catalyst for the cold air moving in around New Year's, like I mentioned. New Year's Eve here, like we're looking at now, going to be very warm. New Year's Day, going to be a huge change from that, very cold. We see this low right here, and it's bringing showery activity, even some snowfall on the very far northwestern side of that low. As we keep going overnight, watch this. It moves up kind of offshore, moves up the east. Some snowfall for Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia happening, also New England, mostly for the mountainous areas as that broad low pressure is over land. When the low pressure is over you, typically things are a little bit warmer, especially not near the surface, but in the middle layers, which causes rainfall because when the precipitation falls, it starts to snow, it melts, and then if it's below freezing at the surface and for a large enough area, height-wise, that can come as sleet. So I would expect quite a bit of a mixed bag for this storm for the northeast and mid-Atlantic, unless you're in the mountainous areas where it's a lot more likely it'll be snowfall. Could be some significant snowfall for some areas. And we get a pretty major cool down here in the east with this. So right afterwards, this is the evening time. Ohio State and Oregon are going to be playing at some point during this time. Unfortunately, I don't really know where they're playing actually. So I forget where the Rose Bowl is held actually. So let me know if you know. It might be somewhere deep in the south for all I know, like California or Texas. But if it was in Ohio, it would be frigid for this game. Even Washington probably wouldn't be that nice, but definitely a lot colder in Ohio here. That's going to be a big game. We do see snowfall across the northwest still persisting, and also still for the Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, northeast with that system that's come through. As we move towards Thursday afternoon on January 2nd, what we're seeing is a building ridge for the west and a deepening trough here in the east. Again, this is very cold. Nothing near as cold as we expect as we get closer to the 10th. So yes, very cold. Not the coldest that we're going to see here. It's going to get a lot more intense. Here's Friday. Again, very, very cold, especially in these corridors here. Building warmth for the west as that jet stream is getting pushed towards the north. So a building positive PNA is what we would call that. And this encourages even more cold air to move into these areas. So we're going to see that trend and revolving door keep on going, basically. And as this jet stream is located mostly over the northwest, expect to see lows kind of moving along this line here for the time being. And as we move towards Saturday, here on January 4th, we see a low right in that area. Some snowfall happening for the Cascades and Sierra Nevada. But not only that, Northern Rockies also looking pretty intense there as well. As we just keep going towards Sunday, January 5th, we see a low over eastern Kansas. Some snowfall to the northwest of this. So for the northern plains, upper Midwest as well, seeing some pretty decent snowfall. Also some ice across some of the Midwest as well could be possible there for that early January timeframe if this verifies. And we're about to get a quick warm up here as this moves through. Watch how this all plays out. We get more of an inland storm here for Monday, low near Indiana. Warmth is pushing up the coast here, just like this out ahead of the cold front. So we have a warm front right in this area here. And then we have this dragging cold front, which is going to bring about even deeper cold air than we saw with the first blast of it. So we're seeing this type of a pattern with this storm. So again, warm air for maybe a 24-hour period maximum around the 5th, 6th time frame. It's going to be a very brief warm up and then right back to the colder temperatures, if not even colder than they were before. Great Lakes, upper Midwest seeing some major snowfall with this one. And then also we have another snow system here for the Northern Rockies taking place, which is also quite major in its own regard. By Tuesday, once this low is kind of over Indiana, it actually kind of meanders off the New England coast. We do end up with some back-end snowfall here for some of the Northeast with this one. We can tell that the center of our kind of polar vortex at this point is dropping in, and this has the chance to be something that I've really never seen in my life. We see a polar vortex event taking place right here. And we don't see these every year. This is every, few years, if not longer. And we see it kind of wanting to drop down into this area here. So we're seeing it move this way. And for these areas, these events do happen 1 or 2 times every, 10 years, 7 years, something like that. We'll see it drop down into this area. But what we're going to see is over time, this is going to drop down, and it's going to keep dropping down. It's going to drop down towards these mid-Atlantic areas. And that is something that I have not seen. Talking single digits, maybe even sub-zero temperatures. Temperatures that these areas do not see is what we can expect with this type of event if this verifies. So let's keep it playing. Wednesday, polar vortex again has dropped down into this area. And we see cold air all surrounding it. We see for the Rockies, the Southern Plains, Ohio Valley, Northeast now starting to get some of that. And we do see a storm right here trying to come together. This is a storm that the GFS has been showing as a very far southern slider, bringing potential snowfall to very wacky areas in here. It happens, but, not every year as we've learned the last few. Typically, these areas, like I know my neck of the woods, you do see 1 to 2 snowstorms a year, so it's not too outlandish. Same thing for north central North Carolina and western North Carolina. This kind of corridor here does see snow. It's not like a snowless area. It's just been snowless for 3 or 4 years now, which is by far the longest drought I've ever seen. Let's keep this going, though. We see it looks like it's coming together for Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee. These deep south snowstorms, again, happen in these types of air patterns, so it's not the craziest thing in the world given the pattern we have. And then we see it move offshore. It's here offshore of kind of Florida and Georgia here, bringing snowfall to the mid-Atlantic, some of the deeper south areas. It's pretty far inland, though, despite all of this low pressure being pretty well offshore. Polar vortex continues to drop down. This is by the afternoon. We're seeing mostly northern Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, DC, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, New England, seeing this snowfall by Thursday afternoon. By the evening time, we do have a decent little low here offshore of Long Island. Some mixing right by the coast, but snowfall primarily for New England, mid-Atlantic there could be a decent system. The heart of this polar vortex event is still over kind of the Midwest here. Again, this is expected to continue to drop down. Typically, we would see these events drop down and kind of hook back up, something like this. They usually don't just keep going, and that is the difference between what we're going to see and what we typically see in these types of events. So watch it. This is Friday afternoon. Now it's over the Ohio Valley. It would be incredible to see a football game in these types of conditions. It would be unbelievable, probably bordering on one of the coldest football games ever, if not the coldest, because I can guarantee you these temperatures are significantly below freezing. Very, very significantly below freezing. We see the jet stream is way down over the Gulf of Mexico. We are seeing snowfall here offshore of the Gulf Coast. So there's not a snowstorm over over land here, but we do see kind of ocean effect snowfall happening here, also off the southeast coast. Very telling of how cold this model is predicting these temperatures to be. As we keep going towards Saturday afternoon here on January 11th, again, the heart of this cold somewhere in this area, very frigid. We see a very strong low here, 969, bringing widespread snowfall showers and even heavier snowfall there. We end this model run off on a very, very dramatic note. Now let's take a look at the GFS model. Let's see what differences and similarities we have here. And what we see is that first storm moving through kind of the Ohio Valley and Great Lakes. We get this northeast one again, very mixed bag event, some high elevation snowfall, but I could see some wintry mix happening in a lot of these areas as it moves through. About the first, here's the second. Keep moving through the third here, maybe a little bit of a very weak clipper system trying to move through into the southern Ohio Valley there. That could be interesting to track. It does make it kind of towards the coast before drying up. We have some pretty deep cold air here by Saturday the 4th, but again, we get a brief little mild push up the southeast coast there as this storm drops through. bringing snowfall to the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley. This is when things get very dramatic here. Reaches the east, bringing mid-Atlantic and northeast snowfall before moving off of New England. Everything here is the same. And then we start to get this polar vortex type activity. Not quite yet, but we have deep cold air here by this point, warm out west. And then there comes that polar vortex straight through the Midwest. Wait, I need to backtrack because we're missing some stuff here. First off, we get a clipper system moving down towards Virginia, perhaps. Some snowfall, and then we get this kind of coastal system that wants to match up with it. So watch it play out. This is around the 9th, 10th time frame. This is the 10th afternoon, about 1 p.m. We see some snowfall for the southern mid-Atlantic, and then here comes that southern piece of energy. Again, a little further southeast than the European model, but it's also later. And again, this is a little bit of a rarer type of snowstorm, a little far to the south, but not completely unheard of, but you want to take it with a grain of salt. The GFS model tends to put things a little bit too far to the southeast. Here in Virginia, I've always said when you're looking at the GFS model, this is what I tell my family and friends, if the GFS model has the storm too far to the south of you like this, that probably means that you would actually be in the bullseye if it ended up being correct. So that is kind of a good sign for areas a little further north than this, is how I would take it on the GFS model. It's not true every time, but if it shows it over you, there's a good chance it's going to come north from you over time, and that's not what snow lovers want, obviously. Polar vortex kind of arriving towards the southeast by this point. Major New England blizzard happening here, as that low is well down into the 970s. The wind would likely be insane. So would the heavy snowfall. And then it comes and goes. We also get a second low right behind it, but it's so far offshore with the jet stream that it ends up just bringing snowfall to kind of the ocean. As time moves on, we kind of end things off same way. Not quite a polar vortex, but still well below normal temperatures, with above normal temperatures in the west. The cold air still infiltrating the east straight through the 13th here. Very telling, very severe, and a huge step above what we saw in yesterday's video. As we take a look at the total precipitation, it's pretty clear to me that the storm track, for the most part, is heading through the northwest like this. We see some storms cut through, but we also see quite a few build off the coast here, and that's going to be the general flow through the next weeks. We see, obviously, when you get this warm bubble underneath with high pressure, that causes the storms to go up above. And then you got the cold air throughout a lot of these areas, and that's what's causing the storms to move around it. So that's kind of the pieces at play here. Your anomalies we see mostly above average for a majority of the north here overall, with the most below normal throughout a lot of these areas. And really through here, it's pretty spotty, as you can see. So I'd hardly call it below normal for this pocket. It's kind of neutral, if anything. When we look at the total snowfall in the European model, it's pretty significant. I mean, we see the Cascades, Sierra Nevada seeing a ton, Rockies seeing a ton, the northern plains, even the central plains and Midwest here seeing a ton of snowfall, Great Lakes. And then we get kind of this deep south up the East Coast area where we get some storms moving through. That certainly brings some uncharacteristic snowfall to the deep south areas, and then up the Appalachian Mountain Range here. Again, some ocean effect snowfall happening at times out here. So we see that taking place, which I guess with how warm the waters are, that would make sense that there would be some unusual things happening in the Gulf and Southeast coast. We're kind of in very rare and uncharted territory for me, so it's going to be interesting to see how these, like the Gulf interacts with, very significant sub-freezing temperatures. If we saw that truly play out, I don't know what effect that would have on some areas. It could be really interesting learning experience for me and all of you as well. It's going to be really interesting if we see that occur. Now, as we take a look at the GFS model, we see kind of a more southeast solution. So again, getting snowfall in these areas. European model's a lot further inland with it, but could be somewhere like this, could be in the middle, could be where the European model shows it. There's still a lot of time to go, so we could see some massive changes. I think something interesting is we see a lot less here over the Rockies and Cascades and Sierra Nevada, and also over the northern plains we see a lot less, but still very, very significant amounts in this pocket. Definitely worth noting. Now, the European extended ensemble model, this is going to be through the next 46 days. Take it with a grain of salt. Don't take it as exact measurements. Obviously, it's a hugely just averaged out ensemble model, but I wanted to mention to you guys that we have seen this kind of increasing the totals everywhere. which is going to tell us that this model just expects above average snowfall for a lot of these areas. That's the biggest takeaway, especially in areas that do see snowfall. This could be pretty close for some folks. It's just a very low resolution kind of output. But to see it increasing the snowfall means that this model is predicting more chances of snowfall, which is a good way to look at the long range as opposed to exact amounts. Now, when we zoom this in, we see these increases. This area was a lot closer to, let's call it, 5 to 7 inches. Now we're seeing 7 to 10. These areas were a lot closer to 1 to 3. Now we're seeing like 2 to 5. So we're seeing this model showing the increased amounts, which again doesn't matter for the amount of snowfall, but what it does matter for is this model is calling for increased chances of snowfall, which certainly plays a role. So that's going to be something that we're paying attention to. Now the temperature pattern on the European model, again, warmer for the next couple of days, kind of cooling around the 30th. This is still 5-10 degrees colder than it was, even though it's still above normal. Then we see the cold air moving in. Here's the first, second, third, fourth, and again, we're dealing with the blues, which are about 1 to 10 degrees below normal, the greens, which are about 10 to 15. Pretty standard stuff. And then as we keep going, this is when that polar vortex type event starts to move in. Here's Tuesday, January 7th. We're seeing those not only purplish blues, which is 15 to 25 degrees below normal, but we're also seeing the magentas, which are 25 to 35 degrees below normal. And somewhere in here, it's 50 degrees below normal. We know that because of the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. So this is calling for, if your average temperature was 100, it'd be 50. If your average temperature was 50, it would be 0. So that is a huge departure from what's typical. We look at Wednesday. It's all kind of moving in. Here's Thursday the 9th, Friday the 10th. And again, these brutally cold temperatures moving well down into the south, as you can see. This is exactly what I was talking about. This is quite substantial. And I want to take a look here at the east so we can see actual numbers on screen. And look at this. We are seeing widespread 30 to 40, even 50 degrees below normal in all of these areas. That would be absolutely earth-shattering for a lot of these areas. Just unbelievable, unlike many things I've ever seen. And it kind of just continues. Look, we see it start for, I guess it starts moving into the east around the 10th, 11th, 12th. So we're likely seeing at least 3-4 days of this very severe cold. And outside of it, we're already seeing colder temperatures for days. So we could see long-term cold, like significantly long-term cold. Here's the actual temperatures, and I wanted to show you this. I think everybody should know what their averages are, but for me, it's like highs in the 50s, lows in the upper 30s. Right when we move around the 5th here, we're seeing lows in the 20s, mid to low 20s for a lot of these areas, even the teens. Pretty cold. Highs in the upper or lower 40s, upper 30s, really, really chilly. But this is when it starts to move down, right here. Thursday the 9th, here's the high temperatures. We're seeing temperatures in the mid to low 20s in here. We're seeing teens in here, single digits, and then even below 0. We're seeing 20 below 0 as a high for Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, Illinois. This would be significant. And we see, this is the low temperatures for Saturday the 11th. Look at this. Central and southern Gulf states, even Florida, in the teens. Look at these temperatures. This would be insane. Coastal southeast, seeing teens, single digits here for a lot of these areas. And then below 0 in all of these areas, kind of in the greenish shade. We're seeing areas like Tampa below 0, or below freezing, not below 0. That'd be, oh my God. Orlando in the 20s. We are seeing very low temperatures. And the high temperatures, this is the high temperatures in the teens for these areas right here. In the 20s for these areas and near freezing for many others. I want to see if we had an even colder frame at all. No, that's going to be our coldest. Let's take a look at the GFS model. And we see very similar things, believe it or not. It gets pretty cold after the first. And then here comes the actual polar vortex event right there. Very significant. It might not be quite as significant, but it is very, very significant to say the least. When we look at the east, we don't see the widespread 40s and 50s below average, but we do see 30 to 40 below average, which is already in its own regard very, very cold. When we look at the actual temperatures for this, I mean, you would still be seeing teens, single digits, 20s in a lot of these areas around that Saturday, Sunday time frame, 11th, 12th. Really unbelievable. When we look at the long range models, we see that here's the 1st through the 8th, quite cold. Then here's the 7th through the 14th, very, very cold. This is that polar vortex time period. Then even the 14th through the 21st looking quite cold. We're going to get great agreement here from the GFS ensemble model, which that was the European one. Here's the GFS one. Pretty cold, again, between the 1st and the 8th. Then the 7th through the 14th getting a lot colder. 14th through the 21st still quite cool, but not quite as much. That's 2/3 of the month, or that's 3/4, I guess, better yet. And that would basically guarantee us a cold January. Here's, again, the 1st through the 8th. On another model, this is a CFS model, much cooler between the 7th and the 14th. And then here's the 14th through the 21st. All three of those long-range models, all of them are completely different, and every single one has great agreement here. I think that is quite significant. So we're going to be continuing to track this with you guys every single day. Snowfall threats will accompany this. If we see this verify, there is not a shadow of doubt that there will be snow, and there will be snow in areas that it is a little less typical. So be on the lookout for that. If we see this throughout the month, I think many, many folks are going to cash in on snowfall. And not only that, one of the coldest winter months, if not the coldest, of maybe the past 5 years, 10 years, maybe even my lifetime for my area, if we saw this severe cold play out. So huge, huge developments here on the model. Keep in mind, things can change a little bit. You know, if it looks a little bit warmer than this, we might just end up with a very cold month. But if this verifies, this is going to be, again, very, very brutal, very severe, and actually deadly in many different areas, especially the Midwest, where, again, well below zero as the highs. I mean, that is deadly cold. That is unsurvivable. So crazy, crazy stuff, guys. Be sure to subscribe. We upload almost every single day. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.